Hello, students, teachers, parents, science nerds. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Nutshelled Science, where we lay out the facts, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Today, we are going to continue our environmental science series by looking at economics and environmental policy. Don't forget that there's a link for worksheets that go along with this video in the description. I just ask that you like and subscribe. I apologize for any mispronunciations ahead of time. I do my best. All right, everyone, settle in. Today we're diving into the thrilling world where economics and environmental policy meet. I know, it sounds like the setup for a dry textbook chapter or the world's most confusing blind date. But hang tight, because these two fields are more connected than you'd think, and understanding their relationship is key to tackling some of the biggest challenges we face today. Let's start with the basics. What is economics? At its core, economics is the study of how people use resources to produce goods and services, and how those goods and services are distributed. But it's not just about money, it's about choices. It's about how individuals, businesses, and governments decide what to do with their limited resources. And as we'll see, it's also about how those choices ripple out to affect our environment, sometimes like a pebble in a pond, sometimes like a cannonball in a kiddie pool. Fun fact, economics and ecology both come from the Greek word oikos, meaning household. That's not just linguistic trivia you can use to impress exactly one person at a dinner party. It's a useful metaphor. Earth is our shared household, and how we manage its resources, whether through economic systems or environmental policies, will determine the future health of our planetary home. So basically, it's house rules: no wasting resources, clean up your mess, and please don't set the couch or the atmosphere on fire. Now, let's talk about the different types of economies. First, there are centrally planned economies where the government makes all the big decisions: what to produce, how to produce it, and who gets what. Think Soviet Union, or a really intense group project where one person insists on doing everything. On the flip side, we have free market economies, where decisions are driven by individuals and businesses, with supply, demand, and competition steering the ship. That's your classic capitalist model. High risk, high reward, and occasional economic roller coasters. Most countries today use a mixed economy, which combines elements of both. The government steps in to regulate certain things like food safety or pollution levels, the basics, while still allowing market forces to do their thing. Think of it as capitalism with a seatbelt. One of the strongest forces in any economy is supply and demand. Imagine a graph where one line goes up, the other goes down, and they meet in the middle. That's the equilibrium. It's basically the economic equivalent of finding the perfect coffee to cream ratio. Delicate, occasionally chaotic, but crucial. Prices shift depending on how much of something is available and how much people want it. This matters a lot when we talk about natural resources. Just because something like clean water becomes more valuable doesn't mean everyone suddenly gets equal access to it. Economics isn't always fair. It's more of a realist than an idealist. That brings us to cost-benefit analysis, the economic version of is it worth it? You weigh the costs of an action against the potential benefits. For example, rinsing a peanut butter jar before recycling uses water, sure. But the environmental payoff of recycling might tip the scale. Multiply that kind of thinking across an entire government deciding whether to subsidize solar panels or regulate fossil fuels, and you've got policymaking in a nutshell. A very complicated, occasionally leaky nutshell. Now let's zoom in on the environment. Traditional economics hasn't always done a great job accounting for environmental harm. Things like clean air and biodiversity don't usually show up with price tags. That's where ecological economics and environmental economics come in. These fields try to put a value on nature's freebies and address market failures. That's when the economy doesn't reflect the true cost of something, like pollution. It's kind of like leaving someone else to pay the check after dinner. Except the check is a damaged river ecosystem, and surprise, we're all picking up the tab. One strategy to address this is eco-labeling, putting little green badges on products that meet certain environmental standards. It's like giving a gold star to sustainable products. This helps consumers make greener choices and nudges companies toward better practices. It's marketing with a conscience and sometimes a leaf logo. In class, maybe you can explore these ideas with videos like Walmart's Green Revolution, which shows how even big box stores can go green when it's in their financial interest. You can also create supply and demand graphs, discuss sustainability trends, and connect theory to the real world. Because while graphs are cool, seeing how this stuff plays out in business and policy is even cooler. By the end of all this, you should be able to explain how economic systems affect the environment, describe different types of economies, and use tools like cost-benefit analysis in real-life scenarios. Most importantly, I want you to see that economics and the environment aren't separate lanes on the highway. They're riding in the same car, and it's about time they started sharing the aux cord. Because when someone says it's just business, remember, business affects everything. The air we breathe, the water we drink, and the planet we're handing off to the next generation. And if we want that planet to be livable, we can't afford to ignore the economics driving the engine. The United States environmental policy. Let's take a trip back in time, no DeLorean required, to the early days of the United States. Back then, the attitude toward nature could be summed up as, look at all this land, let's chop it down and dig it up. The country was bursting with resources, and the mindset was all about abundance and conquest. Forests were endless, rivers flowed forever, and animals? Just walking protein, apparently. The goal wasn't to protect nature, it was to tame it, use it, and if something ran out, well, manifest destiny would just find more of it. But by the late 19th century, reality came knocking. Forests were vanishing. Rivers were more toxic than refreshing. Entire species, like the passenger pigeon, disappeared faster than your leftover pizza. People started realizing, hey, maybe this isn't sustainable. Cue the first environmental thinkers like Henry David Thoreau, who basically said, guys, maybe we chill in nature and appreciate it. And George Perkins Marsh, who wrote a whole book in 1864, Man and Nature, explaining how human activity could, shocker, damage the earth. Then came the first real wave of environmental policy in the late 1800s and early 1900s, the conservation era. Enter President Theodore Roosevelt, part Rough Rider, part National Park superfan. Under his leadership, the U.S. began preserving large swaths of wilderness. He established national parks, wildlife refuges, and the U.S. Forest Service. Now, Roosevelt wasn't a tree hugger by today's standards. His focus was on wise use, not preservation for its own sake. But still, thanks to him, we have Yellowstone and other gems instead of one giant Walmart parking lot. Fast forward to the second wave, from the 1950s to the 1970s. This time, the theme shifted from conservation to environmental protection. Why? Because the consequences of industrial pollution were no longer subtle, they were practically screaming. Rivers literally caught fire looking at you, Cuyahoga. Smog was so thick, it made cities look like post-apocalyptic movie sets. And pesticides like DDT, they were killing off more than just bugs. Enter Rachel Carson, whose 1962 book Silent Spring connected the dots between chemical use, environmental harm, and public health. Spoiler alert, it wasn't good news. The public got concerned, and loud. So did lawmakers. In 1970, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, was born, tasked with the not-so-small job of protecting the air, water, and land. Congress rolled out landmark laws like the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, and Endangered Species Act. These weren't just feel-good slogans, they set real standards, imposed penalties, and started holding polluters accountable. Suddenly, dumping chemicals into rivers became less of a business strategy and more of a legal liability. But then came the 1980s, and the national mood shifted. Don't worry, the environment didn't totally fall off the radar, but debates over economic cost versus environmental benefit took center stage. That gave rise to market-based approaches like cap-and-trade programs, the idea being, let's reduce emissions, but let the market figure out the most cost-effective way to do it. It's like saying, we still want results, but with coupons. States also stepped up. California, for instance, became the eco-overachiever of the class, leading the way on climate policy, emission standards, and renewable energy. Meanwhile, international cooperation started to kick in as global issues like ozone depletion and climate change demanded solutions bigger than any one country could handle. So, where are we now? Today, U.S. environmental policy operates on three levels: federal, state, and local, and it's influenced by a delicious mix of science, ethics, economics, and politics. All three branches of government play a role. Legislative branch, Congress, they write the laws. Think of them as the idea factory, hopefully fueled by more than just lobbyist snacks. Executive branch president and agencies like the EPA, they implement and enforce the laws. They're the boots on the ground, the people who actually get things done, or try to, anyway. Judicial branch, the courts, they interpret the laws. If there's a legal fight over, say, whether a pipeline violates environmental law, these are the folks with the gavels and the final say. One of the most exciting trends in recent policy is the push towards sustainability. The idea that we can meet today's needs without robbing future generations of their shot at clean air and drinkable water. It's a lofty goal, sure, but also a necessary one. We're seeing tools like green tax incentives, eco-labeling, and public-private partnerships becoming more common. These are creative ways to guide behavior without always relying on strict regulations, kind of like giving gold stars instead of detentions. So to sum it all up, U.S. environmental policy has gone from cut it down and ship it out to, wait, maybe we should protect some of this, to, okay, let's make some rules, to today's hybrid approach of regulation, innovation, and market-based tools. It's a story of learning from mistakes, shifting priorities, and trying to balance environmental protection with economic reality. Because in the end, environmental policy isn't just about paperwork and penalties. It's about how we choose to live, how we treat our shared home, and how we ensure there's still something left for those who come after us. Or, to put it another way, it's our group project as a species, and no one wants to be the slacker that tanks the grade. International environmental policy and approaches, aka saving the planet one awkward treaty at a time. All right, Globetrotters, buckle up, because environmental issues don't carry passports, and they definitely don't stop at custom. Pollution, climate change, and disappearing resources are the ultimate jet setters. A factory in one country can affect the air in another. A river polluted in Mexico can spill right over the U.S. Border looking at you, Tijuana River. And migratory animals, they don't care about your visa policy, they go where they please. Meanwhile, multinational corporations often play hopscotch with environmental regulations, doing whatever's easiest and cheapest in each country. In short, if we don't cooperate internationally, we're basically trying to mop up the ocean with a paper towel. That's why international cooperation is absolutely essential. Countries need to work together, not just because it's the nice thing to do, but because it's the only thing that works. The problem? There's no global eco-police force. Most international environmental organizations can't hand out tickets or throw polluters in a planetary jail. Instead, they operate with tools like funding, peer pressure, the grown-up version of everyone else is doing it, and public shaming via media headline. Let's take a look at some major international environmental treaties. The big names of the global green scene. Antarctic Treaty System, 1959. Basically says, nobody mess with Antarctica. It ensures the continent is used for peaceful scientific research and not, say, building an ice-themed mega casino. CITES, 1975. That's the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, or as I like to call it, the You Can't Sell That Tiger Skin Agreement. It regulates wildlife trade to protect endangered species from being turned into fashion statements. Montreal Protocol, 1987, a shining success story in international teamwork. This treaty aimed to phase out ozone-depleting substances like CFCs, the chemicals that were punching a hole in our sky. Spoiler, it worked. The ozone is healing, and humans actually followed the rules. Miracles happen. Kyoto Protocol, 1997, a global attempt to reduce greenhouse gas emissions below 1990 levels. Think of it as the early draft of our climate action homework. Some countries signed on, some didn't. UNFCCC Copenhagen 29, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change tried to rally countries around a post-Kyoto plan. There were a lot of speeches, some ambitious goals, and yes, quite a bit of political side-eye. Progress was made, though, like many international meetings, results were mixed. Policy tools used around the world, command and control. The government says, you can't do that, and if you do it anyway, there are fines. It's the classic, because I said so, approach. Subsidies, a little economic encouragement for good behavior. Think of it as giving farmers or companies a cash high five for doing the right thing, like using clean energy or preserving natural habitats. Green taxes. Taxes on products or actions that harm the environment. Want to pollute? Sure, but it's going to cost you like adding a luxury fee to bad behavior. Cap and trade. The government sets a limit on emissions, hands out or auctions off permits, and then lets companies buy and sell those permits. It's like Pokemon cards, but instead of Charizard, you're trading the right to release carbon dioxide. Steps in creating an international environmental policy. Identify the problem. Hey, our coral reefs are dying. 1. Set goals. Let's stop doing whatever is killing them. 2. Develop proposals. How about a treaty banning reef harming sunscreen? 3. Gain support. If you sign, we'll totally invite you to the next climate summit banquet. 4. Implement the policy. Okay, the sunscreen ban goes into effect next year. 5. Evaluate the results. Well, the reefs are still stressed, but slightly less so progress. In short, international environmental policy is like a giant group project, except the group includes 190 plus countries, nobody agrees on snacks, and half the team keeps leaving the Zoom call. Still, despite the slow pace and messy politics, these cooperative efforts matter. Whether it's protecting species, stabilizing the climate, or cleaning up oceans, real progress happens when countries decide to act together. And now, the nutshell. Economics and environmental policy might seem like an odd couple, but they're deeply connected. Our choices about how to use resources affect the planet, and vice versa. From supply and demand to cost-benefit analysis, economic tools help us understand the real impact of pollution, conservation, and sustainability. In the US, environmental policy evolved from A, nature is endless mindset, to a robust system of laws and agencies like the EPA, with landmark legislation in the 1970s setting the stage for ongoing debates about how to balance economic growth with environmental protection. Internationally, the stakes are even higher. Pollution and climate change don't respect borders, so treaties like the Montreal Protocol and agreements under the UN framework aim to tackle these global issues through cooperation, incentives, and good old-fashioned peer pressure. Whether it's local or global, command and control, or cap and trade, the bottom line is this: saving the environment isn't just about hugging trees. It's about smart policy, collective action, and realizing that our economic choices shape the world we all share. There you have it, folks. That is economics and environmental policy nutshelled. Thanks for stopping by Nutshelled Science. Don't forget that it is economic policy for you to go nuts on those like and subscribe buttons for me. Thanks! I'll see y'all next time on Nutshelled Science.